Money Stop Mafia, we are back. It's Cole and Steven, the Cusumano brothers. We are back with another episode of your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. That would be the Money Stop. And hopefully you listened to last week's episode. Talladega, we had arguably our most successful super speedway race of predictions ever before. We predicted the whole top five. We predicted Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace in the top 10. This was, as we like to call it, Cole, a money stop masterclass. We say it a lot, but it hits different when we predict the entire top five at Talladega. That is really, really impressive. And we've got to pat ourselves on the back right now.
Yes, we were very fortunate that there were no big ones at Talladega. It was a relatively tame race. And for that reason, actually, I predicted that on our show. I felt that the drivers would be a bit more on their P's and Q's, more reserved, and we'd see a more natural race. And we sure enough did. And for that, we had a very unique circumstance actually here. So you said it right there. We got all the top five drivers unofficially. So Austin Cindric won the race. Your value pick, Ryan Preece, came home runner-up. Then we had Kyle Larson third, William Byron fourth, Joey Logano fifth. Well, a few hours later, we find out that Ryan Preece and Joey Logano got disqualified. So for that, you had Kyle Larson and William Byron get podium finishes. We had Chase Elliott finish top five as well. And in saying that, it's unique because in the betting world of NASCAR, all of those drivers are awarded for those points or those payouts. So all the original top five unofficially will get paid out. You'll still have Kyle Larson and William Byron get their podium finish top three props paid out, and Chase Elliott gets his top five prop paid out as well. So we kind of got six of the top five drivers, which is weird.
That's incredible.
But it still pays in the betting world. So incredibly successful weekend. If you tailed us, you definitely made out handsomely at Talladega. And we have a really good show on tap here for Texas, which should spawn some big winnings in the Lone Star State.
And I just have to say, my sleeper pick, Austin Cindric, won the race. I was very vocal about saying he would win this race. My value pick and my actual sleeper at the end of the episode, Ryan Preece, finished second before he was disqualified. And then my favorite, William Byron, finished fourth in this race. And Bubba Wallace, my other sleeper, finished eighth. So this was, like you said, I feel like the reason this played out so well, obviously, was because there was no big one, which in and of itself was probably different from Talladega races we've seen a lot of most recently, especially different from last spring. So it was a fun race. Obviously, it didn't have the calamity that we usually see at Talladega, but now we go to Texas, and everything is bigger at Texas. That includes the profits that we make. And we're going to talk about pre-qualifying odds per BetMGM. First of all, discussing the fact that we're going to get the starting lineup at 12:10 Eastern time. So take that into consideration. 12:10 Eastern time on Saturday, that is. But your pre-qualifying odds lead off with some Hendrick Chevys. You got Kyle Larson as the favorite, plus 475. William Byron is plus 600. Tyler Reddick and Ryan Blaney are tied at plus 700. And you've got Denny Hamlin at plus 800, rounding out the top five. So, Cole, as we look at our favorites, they are a lot of the drivers that are very similar to that group right there.
Yeah, I think first off, it's important to note that in the next-gen era, we've had three starts at Texas. All three of those starts have been won by Chevrolets. So with that in mind, I think it is correct for Vegas to value Kyle Larson and William Byron as the top two shortest odds for this win, seeing as they're also, I think, two of the best drivers in the sport right now, along with Denny Hamlin. So I'll kick things off here with William Byron, who was both of our pick to win last week, at plus 600 for Texas this weekend. Again, the second shortest odds for the win. And this was an incredible race by this number 24 team. And it was very indicative of why they are, in my opinion, the best team in the sport right now in the Cup Series. They overcame adversity and stayed hot through what is one of NASCAR's biggest wild cards. Championship caliber comeback for this team. They finished runner-up in stage one shortly after they got diagnosed with a steering issue. And the hood was up on this car at the end of stage one. Finished stage two in 20th, was able to rebound, finish third officially in that race. So just incredible effort by that 24 bunch. 7 top 10s now, tied for the most in the series with Kyle Larson now in 2025. Best average in the series at 8.5. And that is he is the only driver in the field with an average finish inside the top 10. So incredible campaign thus far for William Byron. And you look at his Texas resume, He has 2 podium finishes, including a win in 2023, placing third in his last start at Texas. And in that time, he has led uh, a boatload of laps, including 42 in 2022, with the lowest finish of 7th place in the next gen era. He also has a 3.7 average, which is easily good enough for first in the Gen 7 car at Texas. And with that in mind, he has finished 7th or better in 4 straight Texas starts with an 11.2 average finish in 10 starts. That's good enough for their best overall in the series. So William Byron, I think when you look at the favorites for this weekend, there is no safer bet, and there's probably no better bet than William Byron in the field, given his value for Texas. Moving along, though, mentioned our praise for the bow ties, but we cannot talk about the mile-and-a-half tracks without talking about 23XI Racing, and specifically Tyler Reddick, who has blossomed into one of the best drivers on these style tracks in the next-gen era. Again, plus 700 for the race win. Top 5.5 his career Texas starts. That is 3 of 6. With a win in 2022. He actually finished 4th in his last race of 2024 with 143 laps led between all 3 next-gen starts, good enough for second best in the series. And again, just want to hit on 23XI's prowess on the mile-and-a-half tracks, but I think in regard to Tyler Reddick and 23XI, the last year plus, I'd say, we've seen a bit of regression on the mile-and-a-halves, and even for Tyler Reddick in 2025. Only 4 top 10s this season and 85 laps led with a 12.6 average finish, which is good enough for 6th best overall. So he's flying a bit under the radar. I think we want to see more from Tyler Reddick to have a bit more confidence in him, especially for a race like Texas. But you look at those stats, top 5.5 his 6 starts, has a win here in 2022. Again, a top 5 in his last race here. So I think deviating from the Chevrolets to give you some more parity, Tyler Reddick should be a great option for the race win this weekend, at a bare minimum for a top 5 finish, I would say, for Texas this weekend.
I'll take the same route you take in that there's one Chevy and one Toyota in my favorites. I'm going to take Kyle Larson, who obviously is the favorite, and he's coming off back-to-back top 2 finishes. He finished, obviously, as the winner at Bristol, second at Talladega, and he has 6 top 5s this year. That is first place in NASCAR right now. So looking at Kyle Larson as a guy that you can definitely look at as an option for a big money bet too, not just because he has the most top 5s this year and he's got a couple wins under his belt, but also because of his success at Texas. He has 450 laps led over his last 4 Texas starts the last couple of years, and he has the most laps led this year, or last year rather, at Texas in 2024. And 9th place finish here in 2022. He was the winner at Texas in 2021. And I'm looking at Kyle Larson as the favorite in this race for very good reason. The favorite in probably every race going forward. It just seems like that's where Vegas tends to side. And obviously coming off of back-to-back top 2s, that'll help his cause as well. So all this talk about William Byron being the best driver and the best team in the sport, rightfully so. They've been the most consistent, but I think if you're looking at the 2-race sample size, Kyle Larson, a guy that, you came so close to your prediction coming true of him winning in the spring race at Talladega. And man, he was right there. There was just really no run, no move that he was able to make other than pushing Austin Cindric. It was Austin Cindric, right? He was behind.
It was, yep.
Yeah. So there was really nothing else he could do. So I like Kyle Larson again this week. I think, we talked about this a little bit last week. I think that we mentioned you were going to see a driver whose bread and butter was the plate racing, or the drafting tracks, I guess you could say, win last week's race. And that's what happened. I think that as we get into this next leg of the season, kind of the the summer months, I feel like we're going to start to see again, you're going to see those drivers like Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Denny Hamlin that have dominated the sport over the last several months be the guys that win going forward. And I think that's definitely going to be the case here at Texas. And I dealt my hand a little bit early in mentioning Denny Hamlin, who is a 3-time race winner at Texas, hasn't had one there since 2019. So he's certainly due, but he's another one of my favorites. He finished 10th here in 2022, 5th in 23. Last year, he finished 30th, but with 37 laps led. So obviously the finish wasn't indicative of how well he ran. And a 13.8 average finish in 34 starts at Texas, which is a big sample size. Denny was the only driver probably out of the entire dozen we mentioned last week that disappointed me in terms of the finish of, I think, 21st. But I think that there's a bounce back in store. I think that this team and this driver obviously proved that they can win and still do it at a very high level this year. And I think that, like you said before, I'm looking at the Hendrick Chevys, specifically William Byron, Kyle Larson, but I'm also looking at some of the Toyotas like Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin. So I feel like that top four are four favorites. Obviously, they're in Vegas's top five odds for a good reason. And we agree this week with the sports books.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if one of these four drivers did not win this weekend at Texas. It should be a pretty, I think, uniform race, a very clear-cut race as well. But I also wanted to mention, I did not put it on the outline because the news broke after I made it. But Connor Zilisch is out of the Xfinity race this weekend at Texas due to lingering back issues from his last lap wreck at Talladega. And with that in mind, Kyle Larson's filling in for Connor Zilisch in the 88 in the Xfinity series. And we all know that when Kyle Larson gets extra seat time, he usually wins on Sundays. And guess what? He is also racing twice in the High Limit Series at Texas as well. So I think there's a very strong reason why Kyle Larson is a heavy favorite for this weekend. And I think should he win the Xfinity Series race, or I mean, lead the most laps, dominate this thing, whatever, those odds are going to shift dramatically out of bettors' favors for Sunday. So
great point.
This might be a scenario where you want to put money on Kyle Larson now, because chances are those odds are going to decrease for bettors come Sunday. But I like all four drivers a lot this weekend for our favorites. Moving on to sleepers, though, I think it's important to caution here that you're going to hear a couple names that are very high profile. One is a very recent winner here at Texas, but this is a very difficult week in terms of like the bracketing and the way the field is valued in the betting world, because it's very top heavy, and you'll see that here. But sleepers are drivers with an outside chance at the win. And I'm going to kick things off here with Chase Briscoe at plus 2,000. He has finished top 10 in all three of his next-gen starts at Texas. Best finish of 5th, lowest finish of 15th in 4 career starts. That equals out to a 9th place average, good enough for best in the series. Now, I know that's a very small sample size there, but I'm encouraged by what I've seen from Chase Briscoe. He led actually a decent bit of laps at Talladega. He's been running up front a lot more as of late, finally getting his bearings, I think, with Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think you look at the manufacturers who should be players in this race. We mentioned the Chevrolets, obviously, but I think Toyota's not too far behind. I would go as far as saying it's going to be Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, and Chase Briscoe as your top 3 from that manufacturer and that stable come Sunday. But Chase Briscoe should be a really good value at plus 2,000 once again. Another guy that I'll be looking at for potentially top 10 props, top 5 props. Just have a really good vibe about Chase Briscoe for Texas, as well as Christopher Bell, who's plus 1,000 for the race win. And again, very weird to call him a sleeper for this weekend. He is actually the 6th shortest odds for the race win, but I think there's good reason to call him a sleeper for this weekend. He has finished top 5 in half the 6 starts at Texas. Career best finish of 3rd twice here. However, outside of those 3 top 5s, he has a best finish of 17th, which came in 2024, so his last start there. And he has a 13.7 average in those 6 starts. Best finish of 4th in the next gen, which again is his only top 10 in the next gen era. And only 6 career laps led at Texas. So what this tells me is that he is a very boomer bust driver at this 1.5 mile track. That is why I'm calling him a sleeper for this weekend. And I mean, truthfully, if you think about his stats, outside of those 3 straight wins in 2025, he has been a relatively up and down driver from a result standpoint. So I know it sounds weird to call him a sleeper, but I think given his Texas stats and just his overall 2025 campaign as a whole, that's why I'm calling Christopher Bell a sleeper. And I don't really feel as good about him as I do about Briscoe, even Bubba, I would say, and Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. So those are my 2 sleepers: Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Christopher Bell is a sleeper at plus 1,000, but I think he's overvalued. I think that he's a guy that, like, I like what you had to say about the good things with Christopher Bell, but there's certainly some things to be scared away from. But here's the other thing, like you said, where he had the 3 straight wins and has been very boom or bust outside of that. when he gets hot again, you're going to want to be a part of it. And there's a good reason to why he could get hot again this week, because we've seen the success happen at Texas before for Christopher Bell. We've also seen it not happen before. So in reference to the other values that are there, like namely the guys in front of him in odds, I feel pretty good about the, Denny Hamlins and the Tyler Reddicks, even the Chase Briscoes, as far as it goes for Toyotas. But you mentioned Bubba Wallace, who's one of my favorite sleepers for the race win this week, after he was one of my sleepers last week and got into the top 10. Bubba's plus 1,600 for the win. He's had back-to-back top 10s with laps led at Texas, and he's coming off his best career finish here in 2023, which was third when he led 111 laps. Backed that up by finishing 7th at Texas last year. So Bubba Wallace is, we said it last week. This is the second time we're saying his name in the sleepers category. He's having a career season. This is the best year of his career to start to date. And now you go to a track that's right in his wheelhouse in Texas, that's been very kind to him over especially the later portion of his career here. And I'm very excited for what Bubba could possibly do this week at plus 1,600 as another Toyota. We've talked about 5 Toyotas already. We've yet to talk about a Ford, last week's winning manufacturer, and we're going to keep it that way because I'm talking about Chase Elliott now. And man, we've talked about this a lot. It's been an early theme in the Money Stop season here. The fact that I am sick of the top 10s and the top 5s even for Chase Elliott, who did get into it, the top 5 after the 2 disqualifications, continuing to build up really good results. He's got the third best average finish in the sport this year of 10.9, 6 top 10s this year, but a 37 race winless drought, which obviously is the longest of his career since he got the first win. And that is over a full season worth of not winning races for Chase Elliott. But he's going to the site of his last win, Texas. So why not go back to Texas and reopen the floodgates for Chase Elliott, who has over 80 laps led in 3 next-gen starts at Texas. And he has top 10s in half of 14 starts. That is 7 top 10s in 14 starts at Texas. A 12.2 average finish at this track is 4th best in the sport. So Chase Elliott, yes, I'm getting very sick and tired of the top 10s and the top 5s and the great average finish. But same deal like what I just said with Christopher Bell. Like, he's going to get hot at some point again, and he's building towards that. And once he finally gets to that point, I think that I want to be a part of it with Chase Elliott. And if there's a week to include him on this outline, and if there's a week to say he has a sleeper chance for the win, why not at the site of his last win and one of his best tracks on the circuit? And listen, we mentioned this last week too when we discussed Chase Elliott. The Hendrick Chevys have had great speed this year. You saw the win from William Byron, wins from obviously Kyle Larson. Alex Bowman was running up front at, I think, Vegas. And obviously Chase Elliott has had one of the best average finishes in the sport. So there's been race-winning speed in that camp, just not yet necessarily from Chase Elliott. And I think that if there's a week where it's going to happen for him, it could be this week. So sleepers, Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott. It's a very similar looking sleepers category to our favorites, but you kind of get where we're leaning here. We're looking at a lot of the Toyotas and Chevys for our favorite and sleeper drivers this week.
Yeah, and I know this is the side of Chase Elliott's last win, but I think it's all right to call him a sleeper for this week because, again, 37 races being winless, that's over a full season. And plus 1,600 is tied with Bubba Wallace for the race win in terms of race winner odds. So I definitely agree. I think he should be in store for a really quality day. I do want to see him rattle off some more consecutive top 5s and challenge for more top 5s before we consider him a favorite on a weekly basis. But for this point in time, very proper to rank Chase Elliott as a sleeper, as well as the other 3 drivers we just mentioned for this week specifically. But moving on to value picks here, these are drivers that pose some good values, whether it be from a race-winning sense, prop finish sense, or even daily fantasy sense. And you mentioned there during the sleeper analysis, we have yet to mention a Ford. Well, I'm going to mention a Blue Oval right here. And I'm going to break a rule of mine here because a few weeks ago, there were a couple of drivers where I said, you know what, I'm not even going to mention their names until we see them prove themselves. And those 2 drivers were Ty Gibbs, who I'm not going to mention still, and Brad Keselowski, who I will mention here because his stats and his value are just too good to ignore for Texas. He is plus 2,200 for the race win and a really nice 7,600 for daily fantasy. I love the idea of taking a flyer on Brad Keselowski for a prop finish or a daily fantasy driver because he has finished top 10 in all three next gen starts at Texas. He finished a career best second in his last start here in 2024, and he has a 5.7 average, good enough for second best overall in the series in the next gen era through those three starts. Also riding a 6-race top 10 streak here. And I get the apprehensions. He is coming off another abysmal finish at Tallaega after Reckon coming to pit road with Kyle Busch. There has not been much at all to cheer for with this camp in 2025, but we're coming off an off week in Talladega. It should be a reset for most all teams in the Cup Series, and I think there is no driver, no team in more need of a reset than Brad Keselowski, who sits, I believe it's 35th in points right now. The only two full-time drivers ranked behind him, I think, are Riley Herbst and Shane Van Gisbergen, which speaks volumes to the amount of bad luck they've had this season. But Brad's been very vocal about the speed in the RFK camp. We've seen that with Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece this season. It's just a matter of getting that one quality finish and hopefully rattling them off from there. So I think if there's going to be a week where we can see Brad Keselowski get a top 10 finish, it's going to be Texas, given his stats in the next gen era and going back 6 races now. So it's definitely a bit caution to throw the win with Brad Keselowski, but I think his value of 7,600 for daily fantasy, and I think his prop values are going to be just too good to ignore given his stats. And then another driver I'm going to mention here, very under the radar driver, is going to be AJ Allmendinger, plus 15,000 for the race win, and a really favorable $6,600 in daily fantasy. One of our biggest surprises in 2025, I would say, from a value pick sense. He sits 14th in points right now. He's got 3 top 10s in 2025, 2 of those coming on mile-and-a-half tracks, including Vegas and Homestead. And I want to highlight his Texas resume, of course. Although only one next-gen start at Texas, where he finished 29th and crashed, he finished top 10 in all 5 Xfinity starts at Texas. So he has a handle on this track. He's looked really competitive in 2025. That college camp as a whole, even with Ty Dillon, has looked really competitive on weeks. So I think this is a very sneaky good pick for Texas, and one that could pay off in a big way. Again, Chevrolets have been the class of the field at Texas in the next gen. And I think AJ Allmendinger is a driver that I would look at for a potential top 10 finish come Sunday.
Yeah, I was looking at the standings before we started recording, and I didn't realize that AJ was having that consistent of a year to be in a playoff spot if things were to start right now. So I like that pick, and I like that you brought up Brad because the stats are too good to ignore, but I am definitely a see it to believe it kind of guy, and I personally am not touching Brad Keselowski yet, but he's not wrong with anything he said. I mean, you think about the speed certainly being there with obviously Ryan Preece and Chris Buescher so far this year. I think that they're not far off from that sense, but we just haven't seen the results yet this year. So I feel up and down with those 2 picks. I'm going to go with, for my value picks this week, I really do like a couple guys that are plus 6,000 for the race win. I'm going to start with one that I mentioned last week that I was very vocal about. I thought he would win this race, and that is Austin Cindric, who's plus 6,000 for the race win. 7,200 in daily fantasy is one of the best values in the field this week. And, we were saying last week how he had to win at one of his bread and butter tracks. We saw him run so well at the super speedways, and it was just a matter of time before he finally came away with a win. And listen, too, they've had very competitive speed this year. He had a career best 15th place finish at Texas last year. But obviously, for Austin Cindric, top 10s 3 times this year, including at one of our mile-and-a-half tracks that profiles similar to Texas in Vegas. So I'm looking at Vegas results as something to potentially take some stock into, buy some penny stocks in this week. And Austin Cindric had the top 10 there, over 45 laps led in that race, and he ended up finishing 6th, and he won at Texas in the Xfinity Series previously. So I think that a lot of people are going to be maybe writing off Austin Cindric just because he won at Talladega, and it's kind of an anomaly track, but I don't think this is an anomaly. Like, you've seen the speed, obviously, with the Team Penske cars year after year, and especially recently, even this year. I think that now that they've got that first Team Penske win out of the way, there's going to be more to come. And I'm not saying that Austin Cindric's going to go out there and win this race, but I'm just saying that plus 6,000 and 7,200 in daily fantasy are very good values for Cindric. And I don't think that his, I don't think this will be his only strong run of the year necessarily, his only winning effort in 2025 at Talladega. So I like him. I also like another guy that ran well at Vegas, and that's Daniel Suarez, who's coming off of his lowest finish of 12th in the next gen at Texas. He's coming off back-to-back top 10s actually at this track and 4 straight finishes of 12th or better. So he's never finished outside the top 12 at Texas, which obviously resides well above his career average. Finished 5th here in this race last year. And again, I'm reading a lot of stock into the fact that he was one of the cars to beat late in that race at Vegas earlier this year. He has top 10s in just under half his 12 starts at Texas for an average finish of 15.1. So this is where you kind of find value when you see guys that are running well above their career average at a certain track, like Daniel Suarez does at Texas, and you see the first inkling, the first breadcrumb of the fact there could be a good showing at Texas with the great showing that a near race winning showing that he had at Vegas. It was obviously Josh Berry who won, but Daniel Suarez was right there, man, and you had to wear a cowboy hat because of it. So I think this time, it's a little different because we're probably both in agreement on Daniel Suarez this week. So I like Daniel Suarez. I like Austin Cindric both quite a bit as value picks. Suarez is 6,900 in daily fantasy this week. So when I'm looking at how to build a successful DFS lineup, those are a couple drivers I'm certainly looking at as kind of anchors for it.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Austin Cindric, I would argue that he has been the most consistent Team Penske driver this season. Like, you look at the standings right now, Ryan Blaney's 8th with 4 DNFs. Joey Logano is 11th with no top 5 to show for his name this year. And Austin Cindric's just been very competitive, very consistent. Has the win, obviously, at Talladega. I've been very impressed by this team. He's proven that he could win on a track that's not a super speedway with his win at Gateway last year. So I'm very intrigued to see how this team does the rest of the way. But just speaking on how he did at Texas or how he did at Vegas this past year, I think he has a really good shot to come away with another top 10 finish this week at Texas. And in the case of Daniel Suarez, I'm kind of in the Brad Keselowski mindset for you, where I kind of want to see it to believe it. However, with that said, he does have a really good string of runs here, going back 4 races now. And I know an average finish of 15.1 isn't like the most flashiest thing, but if you were to tell me that Daniel Suarez could walk away with a top 15 finish, I would be very satisfied from a daily fantasy perspective, especially given his value at $6,900, because this is a team that has been very underwhelming, in my opinion, in 2025, and a top 15 would be a step in the right direction and just a really good, I think, result for daily fantasy if you were to pick him. So pretty solid category here with Brad Keselowski, Ed Allmendinger, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Cindric.
Yeah, I think one of the themes this week is that you kind of mentioned it toward the top when we were talking about sleepers, is that the sports books kind of have it right this week in a lot of senses. There are some values to be had, but in a lot of ways, this is one of those weeks where our outlook aligns a lot with what we're seeing from Vegas this week as we look at Texas, trying to get these 12 drivers down to 6. Here are the 12 one more time. Our favorites were William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin. Our sleepers were Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, and Chase Elliott. And our value picks were Brad Keselowski, AJ Allmendinger, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Cindric. So of those 12, Cole, give me one from each tier that you like.
I will go William Byron for my favorite, Chase Briscoe for my sleeper, and the Dinger, AJ Allmendinger, as my value pick for this weekend.
I will go Kyle Larson out of the favorites. I will go Chase Elliott out of the sleepers, and I will go Daniel Suarez out of the value pick. So I'll go all Chevys coming out of our 6 drivers there. So now looking, Cole, to big money bets. I mentioned that there would probably be some value to be had here with regards to several drivers over the course of the 12 we just mentioned. But as you look at big money bets this week, what captures your attention?
Immediately, I think the best value in the field for a big money bet is Tyler Reddick, even money to finish top 5, so plus 100. Again, he's finished top 5 in half this 6 starts here, finished 4th at last time out, and we know how good 2311 and especially Tyler Reddick are on the mile and a half in this next gen car. So that is the very definition of a big money bet, in my opinion. And I also sung Chase Briscoe's praises during my analysis as a sleeper. He has the best average finish in the field with a small sample size of 4 races, but ninth place average. He's got a couple top fives here. His top 5 prop is plus 240, so a really good value there. And outside of that, I didn't really see any top 10 props that were worth throwing big money on. I honestly, this is a week where I would kind of look at Kyle Larson for a top 3 prop at plus 135, even William Byron at plus 170, because there just isn't a whole lot of value outside of Reddick and Briscoe in the top 5s, in my opinion. There's not much money to be made for the top 10 props. So I would look at those 2 top 5s in Reddick and Briscoe. I would look at the top 3s, obviously a bit more risky with Larson and Byron. And then I think you probably have the most value, obviously, in your race winner picks with the 4 that we mentioned in Hamlin, Byron, Larson, and Reddick. But those would be the 2 that I would go with for this weekend.
Yeah, the only one I would add is William Byron at minus 115 for a top 5. Obviously, he's got a billion top 5s. It feels like this year he's finished top 5 almost every race. And I know we try to wire our brain to look at anything that's above even money, but minus 115 is right there on the line. And William Byron is going to finish in the top 5. So I would feel confident placing a large sum of money on that bet. So those are your big money bets. It's all top 5s this week. Again, continuing the theme of the fact that the sports books aren't giving you a ton to work with as far as top 10s, because they've got things valued pretty much right. Now, as we look at Grid Rivals bets, Cole, these are better or worse picks and head-to-head parlays. So you can parlay any of these together, whichever the ones that you feel good about. Grid Rival is an app that you're going to have to check on your phone if you're able to bet on it in your given state. But in most of the states, you are able to place these kind of bets, and it's very dynamic. So give me your favorite better or worses and your favorite head-to-head bets, I should say.
Yeah, for the over-unders, I'm keyed in on William Byron better than top, or I guess to finish top 5 if they're better. I like Denny Hamlin to finish 7th or better, and then Chase Briscoe to finish 9.5 or better, so 9th or better for Chase Briscoe. That's a driver, again, that has a 9th place average in 4 starts here in the Cup Series. Denny Hamlin's a 3-time winner at Texas, and William Byron's just been by far and away, I think, the best driver in 2025, and a top 5 machine at this point in the season. So feel good about those ones. As far as the head-to-head parlays go, it's again a pretty difficult week to kind of go with these, because the 3 that I highlighted here, they have pretty significant positional gap, or what's the right word here? I guess positional margins.
There you go, margins.
Right? Is that right? I don't know. It's pretty
early
here.
Spreads, maybe?
Right. Yeah, spreads. There we go. That's what I'm looking for.
There you go.
Yeah.
What is it? 8 o'clock? It's not that early.
Their spreads are significant here. The first one that I like quite a bit here is Tyler Reddick to finish within 3 spots of Kyle Larson. And I like this one a lot because while Larson might win this race, I feel very strongly that Tyler Reddick will likely finish within 3 positions of him when it's all said and done. So that's a good one to go with here. I like Chase Briscoe to finish 4 spots better than Chris Buescher, who has not had the best resume at his home track. But with that in mind, it is a home track race, so there's always a bit more incentive to go out there and get the job done. However, the stats don't really go in Chris Buescher's favor. So that's a pretty big spread there, 4 positions to finish ahead of Chris Buescher. But I feel strongly about Chase Briscoe this weekend, so I will go with him over Buescher. And then another 4-position spread here, Bubba Wallace over Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain has just been very underwhelming in 2025. That whole stable, honestly, has been underwhelming. And Bubba Wallace in that 2311 camp always have a lot of speed here at the 1.5-mile track. So I like Reddick over Larson by within 3 spots, Briscoe over Buescher by 4 spots, and Wallace over Chastain by 4 spots as well.
Yeah, those are all very solid, and obviously they align with what we've discussed. So, loose change here, Cole. I feel like we've covered a lot of drivers. Are there any big names we're missing? I feel like because we had a lot of, a lot of the same picks as Vegas, there hasn't been a lot we didn't cover. I think the only thing that we haven't really discussed are those penalties that you talked about at the top. Joey Logano coming off a really good run at Tallaega, obviously. And looking at him in the odds this week, he's plus 225, which puts him between Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs. that penalty, which I don't think they appealed even. Where does that leave you on Joey Logano at this point in the year? I feel like that's the only piece of loose change to discuss here.
It's so tough because we keep saying the same exact thing every single week. I feel like he's been a sleeper in our category since the start of the season. Like, they have the speed, they've been competitive, they just cannot close these races out. I just really think that this weekend it's gonna be a Chevy or a Toyota in victory lane. You even saw his teammate Ryan Blaney top 5 in the odds. His finishes just have not been here at Texas, really. He's led a ton of laps, but he hasn't been able to close it out. So it's kind of been the story of their season thus far. That's exemplified by them getting their first win as an organization in the 10th race of the season here at Talladega. I feel that there's more value in the Chevys than the Toyotas this weekend. And I don't want to say I'm in wait and see it mode like Brad Keselowski and Ty Gibbs and Daniel Suarez as far as results for Joey Logano, but it's getting to that point because you can only say so many times that they've had competitive speed. They've been running top 10. They just haven't been able to close it out before it's like, how many times are going to make the same mistake, you know? So, like, I think he'll be in competition for a top 10 finish as he has been all season, but just feel better about the Chevys and the Toyotas this weekend.
Yeah, I would feel, I wouldn't shut down picking Joey Logano until I see it, only because like we've seen it so much with him and he's one of the veterans of the sport, obviously. But I would feel better about picking him once I have seen something that doesn't lead us to believe that the piano is going to come crashing down on him again like it did last week when he finally got a top 2 finish at Talladega. So that's where we stand on Joey Logano. Now let's move to our DFS lineup here, Cole. Daily Fantasy per DraftKings. This is all made up of drivers, once again, that we discussed during this episode. I mentioned that there's really good value to be had if you cater your lineup around guys like Austin Cindric, maybe AJ Allmendinger, Bubba Wallace, and that's pretty much exactly what we did here.
Yeah, this is a very top-heavy week for daily fantasy. So, with that in mind, I think you would like to have Kyle Larson in your lineup just because he is a lap-leading machine here. He like leads the series in laps led at this track with like half as many starts as like guys like Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, but he's a very steep value this weekend. So our ace is going to be Tyler Reddick, who I think is the next best option outside of those 200 Chevys and William Byron and Kyle Larson. I would argue from a lap leading sense, Tyler Reddick's the second best option ahead of William Byron. So he's our ace. I feel great about Chase Briscoe as our second man in our lineup. And then we have Bubba Wallace as kind of the meat in the sandwich, third most expensive. And then you got to kind of have some confidence in Brad Keselowski. Have him in here. Again, he's got 6 straight top 10s at this track, second best average finish in the next gen era at 5.7. But again, apprehensions obviously with his 2025 campaign to this point. And then you have Austin Cindric, last week's winner, and AJ Allmendinger backing this thing up as our foundation. So I feel solid about it. Again, I'd like to have Kyle Larson in here just because he's getting the extra track time in Xfinity now. Got the 2 high limit starts, and he's just really good in the 1.5-mile tracks with this car. So that's what my input would be. If there's a way to get Kyle Larson in here, you'd like to have him in there, but it's going to be really tough. And for that reason, this lineup consisting of Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski, Austin Cindric, and AJ Allmendinger is our most well-rounded, I would say.
Yeah, it's tough for me to include Brad K in there, just with what a horrible season it's been for that 6 team. But like you said, it's just it's one of those weeks where it's tough to configure this lineup based on how each of the drivers is basically valued by Vegas this week. Man, I'm almost past this cough. It's a lot better than it was last week, but thanks for toughing with me through this. It's been a rough month with this thing, man. But that is our DFS lineup. You got Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski, Austin Cindric, and AJ Allmendinger. Without further ado, Cole, let's put our money where our mouth is. Pick race winners. I think there's a pretty obvious pick here for me. He was the first driver that I mentioned. And as I pick first this week, he is going to be my pick for the win. I'm going Kyle Larson as my pick for the win this week.
That would definitely be my pick. Mic drop. I like it. Yeah, that'd be my my pick as well. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't in victory lane this weekend. That'd be really impressive as well. 3 straight top 2 finishes with 2 wins in there. I'll go with William Byron. I'll go back to back with him. Again, I just think he's been the best driver consistently the entire season. Best driver in the next gen at Texas by far and away. So the easy answer outside of Kyle Larson, but I think there's a good reason for that. So we'll go William Byron as my favorite for the win. And then for sleepers, we're looking at 15th and lower in the odds per BetMGM. That's going to be Josh Berry and below. Got it pretty. Wow. Yeah, see, this is why it was a tough week to make this outline and kind of divvy up the sleepers and the values because there really isn't a whole lot beyond the top 15. Geez. I will go with Austin Cindric to go back to back in top 10s. Love what I see from this team in 2025. Did really well at Las Vegas with that 6th place finish and laps led. So I'll go with another quality outing for that number 2 bunch at Team Penske.
Yeah, that's solid. He was definitely a guy on my radar. I'm going to take AJ Allmendinger. I feel good about him after thinking about what you said, thinking about the season that it's been, the consistency. I feel like AJ's got a very solid chance at a top 10 this week. So I'm going to go with Allmendinger to go along with my winner pick of Kyle Larson, who now, we mentioned before that he's plus 425 for the race win. That must have been earlier when we made this outline. He was plus 475. Now he's plus 375 on BetMGM.
Oh,
so
my God.
I don't know what changed since we started recording and now, but on BetMGM, he's plus 375. And as you mentioned, after the weekend starts, once he's, made it into a couple of those other races, including the Xfinity race, that will probably shift down even more to like plus 200. So pretty easy decision to take Kyle Larson there. By the way, this is, go ahead.
Real quick. We both stated our confidence in AJ Allmendinger to potentially finish top 10 this weekend. For I wouldn't call it a big money bet, but this is one you want to maybe sprinkle on here. His top 10 prop for this weekend is plus 425, which I would definitely be inclined to put something on. I mean, I think that he should be in store for a really good day. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as your sleeper pick and a guy that I feel really good about as well this weekend.
To sprinkle, it's not a big money bet, but something that you drop $5-10 on that, you might make it up on a bet that you potentially lost in a different sport, not NASCAR, because we're on a roll this year here at the most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. The last thing I wanted to say is I'm recording this episode from a hotel room in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm just kind of in the vibes. I'm in a city where there is a track in NASCAR, one of your favorite tracks that you've been to, Cole. I've never been to Richmond International Raceway, but I am here. And so I'm kind of getting I'm catching a vibe right now before the race at Texas, which, to be honest, I know it gets a lot of heat sometimes, but Texas has always been one of my favorite mile-and-a-half tracks. Maybe it's for the bias of growing up a Jimmy Johnson fan, and he ran so well here, but I always liked going to Texas. And I've never been there in person, but I've always liked when they have gone there.
Yeah, it's put on some really good shows historically. I mean, I think like towards the end of the Gen 6 era and the first race or two in the next gen era, it hasn't been the most competitive or compelling racing, but we've seen time and time again with this car that the mile and a half put on the best product. So I have faith this will be a really good race. Again, we've seen a lot of really entertaining ones in the past. The one that immediately jumps out to me is the one with Brad Keselowski and Jeff Gordon back in whatever that was, 2013, I want to say, 2014 maybe. But yeah, Texas definitely 10% to flare. Should be some really good racing this weekend.
We shall see. This is the Wurth 400 at Texas. This will be 3:35 Eastern time on Sunday. So it is May the 4th in Texas, down there in the Fort Worth, Arlington area. So that'll wrap us up. We're going to drop the jack here on the most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. Hopefully you tailed us last week, and hopefully you do the same this week. So until then, this is, we record these middle of the week. There's always big updates and odds changes that take place throughout the weekend. And there's big, shifts that come from practice, qualifying, you name it. So follow us on social media at @the_money_stop. And he is at Cole_Cusumano_. I'm at Steven_Cusumano. So there's always things that are going to be worth keeping an eye on in addition to what we've discussed this week. So it's a good starting point, but there's still qualifying, there's still practice, there's still a long way to go. That goes for to say every week, but follow us on social media at @the_money_stop. For all of us here at Freak Nation, kicking the tires, Speed Freaks, you name it. This has been another episode of the Money Stop, another successful season that we're working through, and it's just getting started. For Cole, I'm Steven. We'll see you guys next time.